Welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast for leaders of growing restaurant companies looking to take their businesses to the next level. In nearly 2 decades covering restaurants, I've gained access to some of this industry's most influential decision makers, and I'm letting you in on the conversations. In today's episode, you'll hear from the CEO of an emerging fast casual chain about how they're successfully upending the paradigm around better for you natural ingredients and experiencing exponential growth in the process. Henry Borgeson is the CEO of Roots Natural Kitchen, an 18-unit salad and grain bowl concept that was started by some University of Virginia graduates in Charlottesville about a decade ago. The premise was straightforward: make natural food radically accessible to the everyday consumer. But history is riddled with examples of restaurateurs who thought they could improve the quality of fast food ingredients, but still ended up failing. Henry joined the podcast to talk about how Roots' approach is different, from its chef-curated bowls to its fast-moving drive-thrus to its Kids Eat Free program, and how the brand is defying the narrative around the so-called Slop bowl. In this conversation, you will learn more about why simplicity is king no matter the quality of your menu, why you should treat your customers like you've invited them to your party, and why you must ratchet up your volume capabilities in order for the better for you food model to work. If you learned something from this episode, go follow Takeaway wherever you're listening and leave some feedback. It's the best way to get those lessons to your fellow restaurant leaders. Jumping now into my interview with Roots Natural Kitchen CEO Henry Borgeson. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 5 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, sitting down with Henry Borgeson, the CEO of Roots Natural Kitchen. Henry, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Sam, good to be here with you.
All right, we're going to talk all about Roots, which is a fascinating concept, and I think checks so many boxes for what customers are looking for today in their concepts. And you guys are growing, so lots to unpack here. But I guess we have to start, Henry, with sort of that elevator pitch. What is this brand all about?
Roots is all about. I'll word it as our mission statement, which is empowering people through radical accessibility to natural food. Now, we've come a long way, I'd say, stepping into that aspirational mission statement, which I do think we live up to. But from first, what was actually just trying to make the restaurant by the University of Virginia that we wished was there while we were in school. And then it happens to be that created a higher principled or higher ideal mission statement that now we strive for. But really, it's all about natural ingredients. So stuff or no ingredients that you couldn't read the name of, all stuff that grows. And then, but when we say radical accessibility, what we mean is putting that together in stuff that's really compelling and easy to order. And so what that's all about is signature bowls. So we do salads and grain bowls like many other peers that you see in the space that are growing. But our signature bowls are ordered 70% of the time, which we love to get that number even higher, but that's also, I don't know of another concept that gets it as high. And that's one of the key focal points of chef-curated bowls. We've been working with the same chef since the beginning. That El Jefe is our most popular bowl. Pesto Caesar and the Balboa are other popular ones. They're fun names. It's all natural ingredients, but it's super easy to come in. And it's like, I've never been to a bowl place before. Well, I can just tell you, come in and order El Jefe, and I'm sure you're going to like it. And it's become this brand within the brand that has its own cult following. And I think that's what it's been all about. It's making it a big tent to come eat natural food and proving to people that it's all about taste. Taste comes first, comes by Roots.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with that natural food part of it, because you kind of gave that a little bit of a definition, but I want to unpack that a little bit more because, natural food, when I read that, natural versus compared to, for example, organic. Organic is a term with a very specified definition, regulated definition. Natural is a little bit looser. And I think, there's a lot of restaurants out there that might overuse the word natural. Let's dive a little deeper into what that word natural means. What are the ingredients at Roots? How do they qualify as natural?
It's stuff that grows or always fresh and basically stuff that grows. So nothing from a lab.
Sure.
and different than organic in the sense that one of the other pieces from radical accessibility is organic is a specified label, but it carries with it a higher price point. It also carries with it a higher price point that certain people care about, but also certain people don't care about. So our goal is specifically to have a coherent definition of natural, stuff that grows, ingredients you can read, but simultaneously not hold ourselves to other definitions that would make the product more expensive. And so ultimately, by adhering to what we think is a true definition of natural, while simultaneously not tying ourselves to other definitions that exist in the space, we're able to serve really compelling food at prices that compare nicely with Chipotle or even like popular QSRs, such that it broadens the tent. That's part of the radical accessibility bet.
Gotcha. So this would be ingredients too without additives, without some of the crazy stuff that gets into the food supply, steroids and things like that?
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So you mentioned that affordability. I think that's key here, right? Because I don't think anybody would disagree that more natural foods are better, right? And certainly right now, this day and age, there's a lot more attention on this idea of additives, what's in our food. We see that battle over, for example, food dyes. And so natural foods being, I think, something, again, kind of embraced by everybody, but, affordability has always really been such a holdup for more natural foods. How do you guys pull that off? How are you able to source natural foods, but in a fast casual setting with fast casual prices?
It's actually by the third part of by being a kitchen and making a lot of it in-house. So that's also, we make all our dressings from scratch every day. And so we do more work in the back of our house than I think a lot of our QSR or fast casual peers. And then, but simultaneously, by actually making the choice to not be organic, that means we have fresh kale that's delivered 6 times a day. It's just not organic, and so we get it at a really good price, and then we cut it ourselves. Or we have fresh broccoli delivered, not 6 times a day, 6 times a week. Again. Prepped in-house without any additives, so it's awesome. And then same idea with dressings. And so we're making our own dressings in-house, but we sell a good bit of food and so we can make our dressings fresh. And we do large batches of fresh dressings. Again, makes for really tasty food, but it's also makes for really fresh food because it's high volume, and then makes for affordable food because it's not organic. It is just it's not just, it's just, but it's just the commonly available kale, the commonly available broccoli.
Sure. Gotcha. Okay. So inherently, does that make a lot of the ingredients local?
Not, or yes, or it's really, we depend on the same supply chain that most other restaurants most other restaurants in the industry depend upon.
Sure.
But so that means like our avocados are decidedly not local, but again, like stuff that is grown locally happens to be local, but it's not like we've gone out and partnered with local farms. It just so happens that some stuff that grows in the US is available locally. Stuff that doesn't typically grow in the US, we're not figuring out a way to find local avocados.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, and look, these are all definitions to get straight to, because I feel like, so you guys are celebrating 10 years this year, right? So 10 years in business, having opened 2015, first location in Charlottesville, Virginia. If I go back to 2015 and the couple of years preceding, that was a really big moment for organic food, natural food, local food. And I think at that point in time, that's when you started to get a lot of definitions thrown around, or a lot of terms getting thrown around. You started to see something akin to what we would call greenwashing, where people would start overusing some of these terms. And it got a little wild there. And I would argue that at that point in time, because they got overused, to some degree, I think the interest started to wane from consumers who didn't really know what any of this meant. So if we rewind to, go ahead.
And then what I'll riff off that is then it becomes something where I feel like in your branding, it often can become then you should do this specific thing, which ends up actually pretty exclusionary as a brand that's in a category that's growing growing, but trying to grow. If it's growing, it's like trying to grow. And then that means you have to, one of the things we talk about as one of our principles is act like you invited them. And like if you're trying to get someone to come to a party, you're not putting up a bunch of labels that makes them feel like they don't belong at the party.
Right.
And that's what I think a lot of it became. Whereas, yes, natural is opaque. We have a tight definition. But what it's supposed to signal, the brand is supposed to signal that you can come here and you can count on getting good food. And then to us, that means natural food. Right. But then everything we're going to focus on is inviting you to that natural food party. So I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the jefe, or talking about how the dressings are made from scratch, or telling you about our signature bowls and using brand messaging that says taste comes first. Because I want you to know this isn't a place that's trying to tell you you should be a certain way. I just want to invite you in to try a bit of kale and let you know that that can become part of your lifestyle. And so actually it's almost, or not almost, it is more, it's like a flavor-based individualistic appeal, which comes from actually, Roots was a really important experience for me. Before I was CEO, I was actually just living with one of I was trained as an accountant, or I was living with one of the founders.
Okay.
And so I graduated from UVA, and part of the reason I talk about how it was the restaurant we wished was there, I graduated from UVA having done 4 years of burgers, fried chicken sandwiches, and beer, and I was a robust 275 pounds.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to eat. And so many things at the time, and still do, make it seem really hard. Like you got to be a specific thing or a specific sort of way to do it right. And no, there's this way that you can do it right. And then I just started eating Roots every day. My buddy was bringing it home while they were making the spot. And then I started eating Roots every day. And it was really, all of a sudden I was going on runs. And then I was craving stuff like Roots. Like I was craving grilled chicken. I was craving tofu. I wanted to feel how I felt when I ate Roots. And over the course of the year, before even working formally with the brand, I was always talking about the food with them, and I'd shed 40 pounds. I was on track to start running a marathon. And also none of this intended, none of it was I intended to start the year at I'm going to get healthier and I'm going to make myself eat Roots. It was much more, I tasted that stuff. It was good. And the brand really invited me in, all the way to the point that it's extreme in my example. But I think we have this sort of effect on a lot of folks where it's the sort of thing that invites you in and feels good to be a part of. And that's really the experience we're trying to replicate. Not telling you should be a certain way, but just come to this party. It's fun to be a part of it.
Yeah. Leading with flavor, because I mean, it's an important point to make, because so many people, I do think, get turned off by a certain term. So an easy one to make is, or to use as an example, is healthy. So healthy, of course, there's plenty of people, myself included, who are like, healthy, I got to eat healthier. I want to eat healthy, sure. But if you see just straight up healthy on the tagline of a restaurant, some might jump to the conclusion, not flavorful. It's just, rabbit food or whatever. So you guys are leading with flavor, and the health just happens to be a part of that.
Correct. And it's actually one of the things, while you're growing a brand, it's something you have. I sometimes bristle at the use of the word healthy to describe Roots, because the intent is not, I don't mind if you're eating unhealthy and you want to mix Roots in. Again, for the reason I was just describing about me, that if you just want to eat the El Jefe because it tastes awesome and you eat it once or twice a week, I hope you love it just for that. Or I also hope you love it in that you find it empowering in the way I found it empowering. But you don't have to. And so when again, Roots Natural Kitchen, the name, it communicates something about our positioning. Healthy communicates something about our positioning. But I'm always trying to then pair that up with, again, taste comes first. Lead with flavor. I'm trying everything about what we do is meant to help communicate that it can taste awesome to eat natural food, and it's actually super easy. Just come give it a try.
Roots is for Mondays and Fridays. It may be for your Monday when you're trying to eat healthy, but also can be Friday on your cheat day.
Exactly. And if I can riff with you a little bit off that, actually, I talk about that flow with signature bowls of pesto Caesar can be your Tuesday lunch salad, and Balboa can be your Friday night treat when you're trying to get down. The menu is structured that way that want to be with you for both those cravings. Like I don't want the brand to just stand for like you should eat healthy on at Monday lunch. Like it's also like you should eat something tasty on Saturday. And so we're there for you.
And was this an evolution that took time to figure out, or was this something that the founders, your roommate, was this something they knew they wanted to achieve right from the jump?
One of the things that I think is cool about Roots is there was so much time or awesome explosion of energy that led to the creation of the original concept that then a lot of the rhetoric has filled in after the fact to try to explain it and teach it at scale, when really it truly we now have limited time bowls. And so we still work with the same chef that was part of the founding team, who he's still the guy making the limited time bowls. But simultaneously, we have largely kept the same core menu of signature bowls since we started. And the LTOs are really there as like, again, Roots Natural Kitchen. We're a kitchen, so we're cooking. We're making new craveable items. And it's all about creating new craveable items to help people discover through the menu, to not just try one option and then get sick of it, to nudge people towards trying new stuff. But simultaneously, like a lot of it was just informed by what do we wish we were eating while we were in school? What do we think 20-year-old guys and girls wish they were eating? And I think the combo of chefs and founding energy that was so just focused on it in that way created a menu that largely was compelling, and that has withstood our growth now to 18 restaurants. I say withstood, or it's powered our growth to 18 restaurants.
Yeah. Okay, so to that point, I mean, you guys have targeted college towns. So obviously Charlottesville is where you got your start, and you've grown into other college towns. Clearly, when it's started by college students in a college town, there's going to be a lot of that energy and vibe behind it. But 10 years on, you're all older now. And of course, natural foods are for all ages. Is there a specific reason why that college town seems to work so well for Roots growth?
So besides for the natural benefit of it's still a young company. And so if you have gotten older, now have 2 kids. So sometimes it's hard to even realize, because we spend so much time in college towns, it has been 10 years. So I have gotten 10 years older.
Yeah.
But they're often actually, what we found while we were at UVA is still true in a lot of college markets. Not as true, but still pretty true, that they're overlooked. They're graded as B or C trade areas in the markets they're in, because students are only there 8 months out of the year. So they often get overlooked, where if you go to a main college strip, you'll see students, you'll see just amazing foot traffic that you wouldn't see anywhere else. But because it's only that foot traffic 8 months out of the year, a lot of other players will overlook it, or it just will end up with a pizza shop and bars and vape shops and burgers. And we viewed it as such a market opportunity, and then still do. And then we found that we also love it from a brand building perspective, in that if we're providing something you genuinely fall in love with when you're 20, we have a really good opportunity to provide you something you still love when you're 25 and 30, and to follow on and be part of you. So now some of our growth strategy is still going to college towns, finding new college kids, but a lot of it's focused on growing up with our customer base. Where do they move after they've had Roots? We want to be part of the journey after they've had Roots. So that's within cities or to other cities. It's always first universities, because they're often overlooked, and then grow up with our customers once they've fallen in love with Roots.
Sure. I mean, perfect example, of course, is here where I am in Columbus. You guys have 3 locations here now. Your first one was right there by Ohio State. Second one in Grandview, which is definitely more of a young professionals part of town. And now you've opened one in Dublin, which is total suburb, lots of families. That seems to follow maybe a trajectory of that student who falls in love with Roots and then moves on to, each successive neighborhood. Columbus is unique in that it's a very large college town. But, as you guys are growing, is that kind of that model that you're looking at, which is like closer to campus, and then as they embrace it on campus, you kind of move out in concentric circles within that market you found?
That is exactly, or you nailed it on the Columbus description. Although I'd say part of the reason we went to Dublin, specifically diving down into the weeds a little bit, but I think this is what was traditionally that suburb with a ton of families. It's still that, but now it also has a ton of young professionals. Like what we actually find when we were researching it more was there's a lot of kids going straight from OSU to Dublin. They're skipping over the Grandview part. So we were actually originally, when we first looked at Columbus, we were like, it'll probably be quite a bit before we get out to Dublin. And then as we got to know the market better and like doing drive walk, I was like, oh, there are OSU kids like that just graduated out here who like know roots. Like we can definitely come here today. And that's part of how we ended up doing the Dublin restaurant, which we're
sure.
Pittsburgh is on a similar trajectory where we started at UPitt in 2018. We then opened another one up in the city shortly thereafter that serves a lot of the hospitals in the area, some Carnegie Mellon students, but much more something similar to Grandview in Pittsburgh in the Liberty Ave area. And now we've been there for a while, so we're going out outside of the city, up into the suburbs to the north, down to the suburbs to the south, and also over to the relevant suburbs in the west. And so we'll open our fifth and sixth restaurants in Pittsburgh in January of next year. Similarly, looking at Richmond, which is a blend of a lot of UVA grads go there, and VCU, which we got there in 2017, and the Raleigh-Durham area. We're a little earlier on there, but we did UNC in 2021, which I guess Chapel Hill, but it's in the area. And then we're just about to do an NC State restaurant, which we think will fuel further growth into the broader area, similar to what I'm describing in these other markets.
Sure. My former home, I lived in Durham many, many years, and that's a great market for you too. Yeah, it's funny, and this is probably for a conversation another day, but that jump for students from campus to Dublin might also be because they're living with their parents. And that might be I mean, frankly, because Dublin, certainly a lot higher income, and you do see a lot of this today in general, college students not finding jobs, not able to afford housing, moving back in with parents. That maybe works really to your benefit, especially for those higher income neighborhoods where you can put a location in, right?
Yes. I hadn't actually thought of this precisely as it relates to Dublin, but I think that might be some of what's going on. Columbus is really cool just because Ohio State's awesome. Like you end up finding yourself rooting more for the schools where we have restaurants by. So
careful, you might open in Ann Arbor. You got to be careful what you say here.
I do have to be careful, but as of today, I find myself a little bit like rooting for the Buckeyes a little bit. But
good for you.
So many it's just such a vibrant city that there's also like great jobs to grow into right after you graduate, and there's so much there's so many good employers up in Dublin, such that I wouldn't be surprised if kids who grew up in Dublin just moved back in with their parents for a couple of years as they found their footing. So yeah, that's definitely part of what's going on.
Yeah. All right. So a couple elements of the business I want to really look at. First being that you're a bowl concept. So of course, grain bowls and salads, this is something that, really for the decade that you've been in business, this has been one of the foundational categories within fast casual and a great evolution. But recently, as I'm sure you're following closely, there's been a little pushback, and there's this new term that I deeply hate called slop bowls. It's been used to describe Chipotle, Cava, Sweetgreen. Those three brands being, I'm sure, three of your primary competitors in markets where you are close to them. What do you make of just the bowl scene right now? Because, you can make assumptions about those three companies and how they're performing in, their most recent quarterly results and say what you want about the state of fast casual. But I think just for the pure perspective of looking at the bowl as a platform, I mean, that seems to be working for you. And I assume you guys see that working even going into the future.
Yes. Also, I know we're not doing too much public markets commentary, or that's not what but I do I think specifically Cava and Chipotle, I think they're doing a lot better than the last 12 months price moves would lead you to believe. They're
totally
after years of traffic. Yes, and the bowl slop rhetoric, I don't like it.
It's stupid. Make it stop.
After years of traffic growth in a time that's if you go down all the sentiment scores for all restaurants, basically no one in the industry is like saying this is a good macro environment for restaurants. Right. And they're basically holding traffic and sales after massive growth. And for Cava, so many of the restaurants are new restaurants. And so they're opening in new markets and keep maintaining a $3 million AUV, which is really tough to do.
Yeah.
And then they're holding that in year 2, and they're basically getting massively great. Like, I would still bet on Cava, and I'd still bet on Chipotle or a little bit of a random tangent, but Chipotle over a 20-year period went from, I think it was like around 2005. Bear with me as CEO.
Yeah.
I'm painting in watercolors.
Yeah,
but
sure.
20 years ago, they were 90%. It was a burrito place. They were 90% burritos and 10% burrito bowls. When they had that option, it's not like that wasn't a push that they went out and marketed that you should actually eat food. That was customers switched over to demanding that. And then it just so happens that 15 years later, they're selling 85% bowls and 15% burritos just because of a change in customer behavior. That's right. One that we're trying to fill that demand as well. Where that comes from, a variety of places, but it's really just, I would comment that it's some blend of realizing maybe like bread and processed meat isn't a great meal. Like there's it's great. I love a sub. Don't get me wrong. Like maybe actually eating that every day isn't the right move, and that bowls are good, or some blend of that. The other riff I was going to say, though, that I take seriously is post-COVID, the shift to a lot of digital channels. One of the things that I think we've struggled with and our peers have struggled with is the actual complexity of executing on giving people exactly what they ask for in the back of house. What I mean more bluntly is error rate. And I think me and all our peers me and the peers have struggled to actually meet customer expectations in digital channels in the same way we've done it in store. When in store, when you have folks down the line, you have someone on the other side of the shelf that's totally invested in making sure they get their exact right ingredients. When you're building your bowls digitally, oftentimes the technology is built to be a digital replica of a chit. So it's not like I don't blame any of the employees in the space. It's just the technology isn't quite there yet out of the box, where a heavily modified custom bowl or with lines of stuff crossed out that doesn't mirror your make line is really hard to make correct. Yep. And so we were rapidly playing catch up. That now I think we've done a good job. But I think some of the slop reputation, that word, I think some of it manifests from, we've been making a lot of bowls wrong for a long time. And over the last 24 months, we've worked a lot and have actually had massive success rolling out our own kitchen display system that we built to work with Toast, and then tinkering with it to optimize the experience for our employees in the back of house. That now we're getting, I know we've reduced our error rate by 80-90% in some locations to make sure that you're not just getting slop, you're getting exactly the bowl you wanted as we intended to make it. And I'll pause.
Yeah, and I think one of the key points here too is around that signature bowl mentality, because, and this is using Cava as an example. Which, by the way, Cava, I think they reported 3% growth, which they reported something that might have seemed unremarkable, but it was lapping like a 15% growth. Anyway, point is that when Cava gets lumped into that, it's kind of silly because they are crushing compared to a lot of others. But this is not to pick on them, but I think one of the things, they are a good example of what you're saying here with your signature bowls, which is they did not have signature bowls until COVID. And back when I lived in Durham and I worked in Chapel Hill, they opened a Cava there, and I went to check it out. I've been hearing lots about it, and I didn't know what to do because I'm not super familiar with Mediterranean flavors. And I was, they were depending on me to build my own bowl. I don't know what's good, and so you could build your own mess of a bowl and it not even be good because the flavors don't go together. They really learned in COVID to go that signature route, which I think has behooved them, because now if I go to Cava, I'm not trusting myself to build that. So I guess just to, share how that is aligned with Roots, you guys are building bowls here, chef design bowls. So it's not like these things accidentally come together and taste good. You guys are actually putting some authority and expertise behind that.
Correct. A chef curated experience that's super easy to order, that then you can have multiple different experiences for different occasions, like I was talking about. And then that I would say is less likely to be slop, because I think you just elegantly put where not everyone has that self awareness to realize maybe I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And so maybe I shouldn't do this combination of stuff. And this is different for random, because we were talking about Chipotle. One of the things that I really love about Chipotle that I don't think has been matched in any of the concepts that get compared to it is, or there's one that comes to mind actually, Naya. I'm very fond of Naya out of New York, where it's this perfectly simple line where everything goes well together. One of the beautiful things about Chipotle is you really can't make a bad bowl. At Roots, I will admit you can make a bad bowl. That's why I feature the signature bowls. Chipotle doesn't have to worry about this. I also, props to Naya, love their food, eat it all the time when I'm in New York. I don't think they actually need signature bowls. But for the rest of us that have I would say, a simultaneously more complicated, but also like really awesome stuff you can do from a flavor perspective with more, like Kava's flavors are out of this world. It's just that some of the combinations just aren't that great. And you want to de-risk that. You don't want a customer to come in confused, put together something bad, and then think to themselves, I didn't really like that place, because you didn't help them order something good. That's exactly what ends up feeling like bowl slop. Signature bowls are the primary. That's our bowl slop defense. But also when we go on offense, it's like when you walk in, if you look a little bit confused, we're recommending the Hefe or the Pesto Caesar, and actively really trying to like make you feel like you should order that, not like we'll see what happens.
Right. Sure. Well, as a sort of final comment on the slop bowl thing, it's so funny in this industry. And again, I've been covering it 17 years, and I've seen enough of this pendulum swinging that I know in a couple of years we'll all be revering the bowl as the great platform. Again, it's just this stuff is all cyclical, and it just comes back around, and we're in one of those periods where maybe it's going to take a few hits and then come back to where it was before. But let's talk about then more from the operational standpoint, because I think you mentioned a couple of times the pandemic, and it's fascinating. I was looking through your timeline on your website of the growth of Roots, and you guys experienced a lot of growth in and around the pandemic, including Columbus. You were mentioning me before we hit record. You guys opened really when there wasn't anything going on because of COVID. And yet you guys have made it work, despite opening in college towns when perhaps a lot of college students weren't even there. I'm wondering how that period helped Roots in a way, because probably you guys took a lot of lumps and maybe just learned a lot from those experiences to make you better even.
The one thing I'll say, from very early on, we've had very thoughtful, long-term minded financial partners that have been willing to grow through the bad times and the good times. Well, like there's different disciplines if things look do look really scary, which during the pandemic, there were certainly days, weeks, months that looked really scary. But like that long-term viewpoint it's been just viewing it as challenges to advance the concept, where we definitely, we intended to continue growing. The investment was there to continue growing during the pandemic, but simultaneously we totally changed from a footprint we thought of as 1,800 square feet to a footprint we thought as 22 to 25, where we always have two make lines. And then I'm going to go down an experiential fork here that is
sure. Do it.
We always operate two make lines at Roots, one for digital, one for in-store. I
Sure.
think if you go to any fast casual restaurant, it is a brutal experience if you're a digital customer and you walk in and you ordered ahead and you see just an in-store bowl getting made. Vice versa, if you're coming in and you want to place an order, you're so mad if you see an employee making a digital bowl. These things are true. It's difficult if you're coming from a maximize efficiency operational mindset to accept that that's true, but that is really how all customers feel. We've observed it so many times that I'd say we quickly became very disciplined about the important thing is the customer experience. Let's make sure that we keep our digital bowls separate from our in-store bowls. So all customers that walk in never have to experience that agita that comes from seeing one get made before the other. But that took a year to look. I think like other concepts are still learning that, or not even like that took us a long time to learn. And there were a lot of like bumps and bruises along the way. And that's in the midst of rolling out a ton of new technology that you've never worked with before, and a complete shift from where we were basically 90% in-store revenue to now we're 40 to 50% in-store revenue. We're primarily a digital sales or a digital restaurant company. That was something we grew into basically because of demand, and also, but I think because of a thoughtful approach that we break those sales out so then both can thrive.
Right. Sure. So I know too, you just opened your first drive-thru, or recently opened your first drive-thru here in Columbus. And I'm giving myself the assignment that before this episode drops, I'm going to go do that experience. I'm going to get some video and I'm going to throw it onto my TikTok so everybody can go take a look at this. But drive-thru, I mean, that is one unlock that a lot of fast casuals have not been able to achieve because of just the operational complexity of pulling off a drive-thru with these complex bowls and builds. It just doesn't work for everybody. Chipotle has kind of made it work with their Chipotle lanes. I imagine you're following, is it a similar model? Is it the digital order ahead, or how does the drive-thru work with the Roots?
No, Sam, we're super pumped. It's like a traditional drive-thru.
So you can order in the drive-thru.
You can roll up to the box and you can order a Hefe right there. And
good for you.
We will have it. And on most, it's still, this is our first year doing it, but we're hitting those 2-minute 30 or 2:30 end-to-end times that we can sit like out of the gate. We were like, we might have to go digital only if we can't hit it. Like, don't get
sure. That's solid.
We're going to try to hit this. So a couple of the things we've tinkered with, so at our drive-thru, the menu we present to the customer at the drive-thru does not even show custom bowls. That doesn't mean we won't make a custom bowl.
Right.
It just is the nudge to, if you're ordering here, we really think you should get a signature bowl. And then, so that's one piece where we bet that we'd be able to do that. We have been. And so a customer ordering a Hefe takes 5 seconds to say a Hefe, takes 5 seconds to say 2 Hefes. So we can be really quick through the box. And then making a bowl, it's like a Chipotle experience where composing the bowl doesn't take a substantially long time. It's the ordering. This is what we concluded. It's that the ordering could be a substantial bottleneck. If we minimize the likelihood of bottleneck there, we should be able to execute on, quote, traditional drive-through. Up to this point, we've found that's true. It's also, we're doing that at something like, we have 2 drive-thrus that we opened this year. We're putting about 100 to 200 bowls through those drive-thrus a day. That's a good number, but also we're not talking about like a Chick-fil-A capacity of tickets going through our drive-thru.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd have to do things different if we ever have the good fortune to reach that level, but we're pretty proud of being able to do. It's 100 or it's around 100 and around 200.
Yeah. I don't think nobody does what Chick-fil-A is doing. And Chick-fil-A's are like, I always compare them to like an airport. I just feel like they've got, air traffic controllers and the signage, and it is a very, very complex operation and super duper impressive. But look, I mean, 2:30 is really good. I've done a lot of drive-through content in my life, and to know that that's super impressive, and the ability for a customer to get a high quality meal in the drive-through, even all these years in of, we've been talking about how do you get a fast casual into the drive-through experience for years and years and years, and few have pulled that off because of sort of those operational complexities. I imagine this is going to unlock a lot of real estate potential for you.
So that was actually the original catalyst for why we wanted to execute on the drive-through, is that it opens up your exposure to good real estate opportunities. And so it's hard to find good real estate. And I think you don't want to be we will, part of the benefit of being also relatively small is we can be pretty nimble, where we can do still as small as 1,600 square feet. It would involve some sacrifices. We'll also go up to 3,200 square feet. But there are times that it's like, yeah, we'd love to do a freestanding building, because we love the exposure that freestanding buildings create in certain markets.
Right.
And so but you have to do a drive-through. It's like, it doesn't make sense to do a freestanding building if you're not also going to do a drive-through. A customer sees it and thinks there should be a drive-through there. So can we execute on what the customer thinks will be there in that context, was how the question was first asked. And it was like, yeah, we think people want drive-through routes. Like, we think they want something like this. Let's put it up and make it happen. And it's been great. And it does let us be, it's one of the levers that lets us be more creative in the real estate we go after, which lets you grow the right way. You never want to be forcing it into mediocre opportunities. You want to find great opportunities. And I mean, everyone knows this with development, but it's easier said than done to say only do great opportunities. If you're able to do different footprint types and different channel types, you're more likely to be on that side.
Yeah, you can respond to the real estate that becomes available rather than waiting to find the thing that's going to exactly fit what you're looking for. So it makes a ton of sense. And it goes back to that idea of meeting that college kid where they are when they meet roots. And as they grow up, well, here you and I are, we both have multiple kids. You know it as well as I do. That drive-through becomes king because you're, going through for soccer practice or whatever. You don't want to get your kids out of the van. You got to go through a drive-through. So you're meeting them where they are, that loyal customer. Also, by the way, am I right to say you guys have a Kids Eat Free program? Tell me about that.
Kids eat free all the time.
All the time. I don't. How? How do you make that work?
So honestly, again, this is just part of the radical accessibility thing, where it's really just, I have found that before I was living through it, it's definitely true now living through it. But before I was living through it, the idea, it was just, it's hard to take kids out to eat.
Yeah.
And so this is also, it's great if you want to give your kids some natural food. And then it's great if you want, it's all geared towards the customer. Like, this isn't necessarily from a position of it's definitely a business minded approach. It's not like trying to run a charity or anything, but I do simultaneously, it's like parents, I've talked to so many parents that come and just they're like, I love Roots because you do this. And it is, you get that level of loyalty and brand affinity. That's so much more important than when you make a kid's bowl, it's like a little scoop of rice. It's often some grilled chicken. It's some kale and some corn, and it's something like, it's not 50 cents, but it's it's $1 to $2 for us to make. But if I can get another evangelist out there who's telling another parent that they love Roots, and that grows, it's the sort of thing. It's never like the kids' bowl is showing up as a reason we're struggling with margins in a month. But the sales get there. And so if you can get the sales there, and if you can win loyal customers that are, one, coming back multiple occasions a week because you give them something that meets their needs so well, and two, they're out there evangelizing you and they're saying can you believe at Roots kids eat free all the time?
Yeah.
All the time. That's so much more. That means so much more to us than with the food we give to kids. But also simultaneously, it's super fun to go into a Roots and see a kid chowing down on a little baby hefe. It's the greatest.
Well, it's amazing. And again, as a parent, congratulations, because that is a major win. I mean, I take my kids out to, lunch, and I can't tell you how many QSR experiences I walk out of there spending $20. And my kids, they get the kids meal, and I say $6, $7, whatever for it. And you know how kids are; they eat half of it, or they're spending most of their time running around the restaurant or running around the restaurant. And I walk out of there thinking to myself, why did I even bother spending $7 if they weren't even going to eat that food? And on top of that, the options are never very healthy. So it's really an incredible thing. But I want to break down to something here. I mean, this idea of radical accessibility is such a great mindset, but you are CEO and you have to make sure this is a viable business that is turning a profit. Tell me how these two things, radical accessibility and profitability, how do you find some harmony between those two things? Because profitability has to keep the lights on. Radical accessibility being really your core value here. What is that? What do you do to make sure those two things are in balance?
the thing that I think balances those out is we strive for, and radical accessibility compels us to do this, but this year we were aggressive in how we approached the drive-through channel because we wanted it to be as accessible as possible. Doing that helped ensure that Grandview location we opened had a great sales number out of the gate. And so really it's just, if we're doing our mission the right way, that means we're selling a lot of food, more than you'd expect for what I'd consider a more niche concept that you might compare us to, but that hits on some of the greenwashing tropes we were calling on earlier, or that doesn't seem accessible. And so, but at the same time, we do experience, I think, margin pressure, particularly relative to the typical QSR, where, I'm putting more value in the bowl than almost everyone you'd compare Roots to. What I mean is Roots has a higher cost. It's like Roots has a higher cost of goods sold financially than most restaurants we compare ourselves to.
Yeah.
But we also have a higher revenue number than most restaurants we compare ourselves to. And if you have a higher revenue number, one, you're doing a good job from an accessibility standpoint. And then two, you've probably made the margins work at scale at stuff that also won't work for your peers. So, and then this is really and all of this flows through for all the constituents that touch Roots, where that means many different, we have a very large catering business. We do drive-through and we do it aggressively. We have a large digital pickup business. That means we have multiple make lines. This means we have more employees in the store. We love our employees. This means we have more part-time employees than the average concept. We actually focus on making sure we have great part-time employees to make sure they bring, like, a lot of folks will focus on just hiring full-timers. We'll say we focus on hiring a ton of part-timers to make sure there's energy throughout the day. This makes Roots feel like a better place to work. So then it feels like a sport to hit those high volumes. So employees grow to love the fact that we're trying to do radical accessibility. Investors, we're the first, an investor that doesn't necessarily have a keen eye, the first thing they'll hone in on is that COGS is too high. Those prime costs are too high to make work. But why are they? Because the volume, and then it comes down to, this place actually really works. And so it all works together as long as you don't hold yourself to all the boxes that everyone else holds them to, is basically how I'd describe it.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You use this term on your website, optimistic, and this idea of an optimistic approach to food. It's an interesting word to use, especially because I think, again, if I went back to, 2010 to 2015, the movement in, some of these brands and trends that I was talking about earlier, or organic, natural, healthy, local, whatever, I think they were probably overly optimistic. I think at that point in time, there was this idea of like, we're going to change the world. We're going to change the industry. And again, I don't want to pick on anybody, but just to use an example, there was that Roy Choi fast food concept, local, that came out, it's probably 12, 13 years ago by now in Oakland. It was in LA, but I think they opened in Oakland as well. And it was that idea of, we're going to change fast food, it was really ambitious. And ultimately, I think because of that ambition and the bright spotlight they got, it made the failure all the bigger when it did fail, not too long after it opened. And I only use that as an example to say, I think there's been a lot of people who come out here and say, we're going to change how people eat. And it does tend to be a little overly optimistic. And I think, again, the trends cycle through, and at the end of the day, everything just kind of settles out to where it ever was, where people generally like to eat, what is a delicious thing. Often the delicious things are not as good for you, and they spurn the things that are positioned as being better for you. So I say all that because, if I look at where you guys are at today, 18 locations is awesome. And as we've talked about already, you guys lead with flavor. You don't make any big assumptions about how people should eat because of health or anything like that. But, in that first iteration a decade ago, the millennials were kind of carrying this torch of, being better for you. We're going to change the world. What is your impression today of young people, college students, Gen Z into Gen Alpha, and that level of optimism for, like, could they actually change things for permanently? Or is it another generation that kind of comes through, figures it out for themselves and moves on? I guess just that word optimism sort of denotes this idea of something in the future. And you've seen now over 10 years a shift in the generations that are consuming roots. How optimistic are you for what is the future of eating and how it can be better?
Love the pointing out of optimism, that rhetoric as like a millennial holdover almost.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm saying anything new, that if the world feels a little less optimistic today than it did 10 years ago. I think that's
right. Yeah, and that's from one millennial to another millennial, I think. And yeah, we kind of can take the temperature of where things are at today.
So yeah, totally. But also people want to feel good about what they're eating. And then so there's some optimism even in that statement, that I do believe people want to feel good about what they're eating. And then this is something we talk about internally, is having both pride and humility in high doses, meaning we're really proud of what we're doing at Roots. We also know that 18 restaurants, or even you add on many, many more, we're not going to change the entire supply chain in the US. So what are we focused on? And it's specifically, we're at the customer endpoint, we're at the consumer endpoint. And what optimism, it's more at an individual level, that it's like, it's not compared to our peers. I hit on this before, and I haven't exactly used this rhetoric before, but I think it's a really like individual minded approach, where I'm just trying to leave you feeling good about what you eat. But that's both your aspirational self and also your id self, or in this of, you want something that tastes great, but also you really do want to look back and be like, I'm glad I made that decision. And you also want to look ahead and be like, no, I'd plan to eat that I'd plan to eat that because I'd be happy. And I'm optimistic in the sense that if you have more concepts doing that, or if you're a concept that's doing that, you can sell a lot of food. If you create a compelling it is possible to create something that's compelling before, during, and after. If you can create something that's compelling before, during, or after, you can change the course of demand from what it would be by default. If you change the course of demand, the other pieces of the puzzle will come in line. And so it's basically not trying to like engineer it all. It's just, we do what's in front of us. We open more great restaurants. We try to bring more people into Roots. I know as a byproduct, we have people that we have parents who are super excited that they can get Roots versus what they would have otherwise get. We have people that would have been eating like me in college that are happy that they can eat a Hefe, and they'll end up feeling a little bit different, and still have that millennial optimism of, if you stay in your lane and do things right over and over again, the world will get better. And then I think Gen Z is happy to engage with that. Like, even if like so much of the rhetoric out there is not, again, I come back, this is where the optimism comes in. I do think everyone wants to feel good about what they're eating. They're not all as cynical as what the internet looks like. They're not all as jaded as what it looks like at the internet. If you walk into a Roots, you'll find people that feel pretty good about it. And so it keeps us staying optimistic.
Yeah, a fabulous answer to what was a convoluted question, but you hit the nail on the head there with that idea of cynicism, because again, I think here we are as millennials, and have seen a lot now in the last decade of where this industry has come, and it's easy to get cynical. And in my position, to have a lot of brands come through say, we're doing it differently, we're going to change things, and I'm like, yeah, sure you are, bud. I've seen a lot of people like you who came through weren't able to do that. But what I appreciate about you and Roots is you guys are not. You're not aggressively coming in and asserting that you're going to be the ones to do X, Y, and Z. You're just coming in and saying, hey, we're going to serve a good product, and it happens to be a natural product at that, and that meets people where they are. Henry, last question for you, though, considering all this, what is next for Roots? What should we expect for this brand in the coming years? We are continuing to execute on the strategy that I was laying out here, perhaps piecemeal, of a blend of opening in college towns that are in or around our current operating footprint. Again, finding those college towns. We just opened in Morgantown, West Virginia, by West Virginia University. Sure. Perfect example of an awesome college town strip that had chicken fingers, a good bagel place, and a Chipotle, and awesome bars. Fun place to hang out. Yeah. There's no one doing anything like Roots there. It's an awesome restaurant from there. So looking for opportunities like that, and then looking to grow up with our customer base. We opened 6 this year. That was the most we'd opened in a year. It's gone well. Teams feeling good, even after this weekend when we just opened one.
And so next year we're aiming to do something like 6 to 10. We've got a pretty good development pipeline, and we'll keep growing from there. It's also today we're the one other piece that always comes to that we're all company owned. We've been focused on company owned. As you're still doing things where we build the sort of like this year we just experimented with Drive-Thru. Our box is constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. What we both stay true to ourselves, but Roots is constantly evolving. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily know where the space is going, such that we continue to open great restaurants and iterate from there. Maybe we franchise one day, but it's not necessarily on the immediate horizon. What's on the immediate horizon is our team continuing to open great Roots.
Awesome. Well, it's exciting to watch, and good luck to you, Henry Borgeson, the CEO of Roots Natural Kitchen. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, Sam. This was great.
That was my interview with Roots Natural Kitchen CEO Henry Borgeson. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 5 takeaways. My first takeaway is that no matter the quality of your menu, you must keep things simple. This is a theme going around the restaurant industry these days, especially after the last couple of years in which restaurant companies have been throwing stuff at the wall just to see what sticks in order to get their traffic numbers up. I get it. It's easy to make this knee-jerk reaction and to innovate and offer LTOs and complicate things in order to try to, get the attention of the consumer. But more and more companies are coming around to this idea of menu simplicity. And that's what Roots has been all about really since day one. And Henry did such a great job explaining why that simplicity is so important, especially when it comes to something like natural foods or, a menu that maybe not as familiar to consumers. You have to give them the ability to come in and just point at something and say, I want that. Americans are suffering from decision fatigue. There's so much noise in our lives. There's so many decisions to make that if we can just point at the thing instead of designing the bowl for ourselves, designing the menu item for ourselves, it just makes it so much easier. And so if you have a high quality menu, but you're giving the consumer all of that decision power to build their own bowl or whatever it is, it can be overwhelming. And the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, they don't always know what is best. This was something that Henry and I talked at length about in this interview, and will come up again in more of my takeaways. But, I shared how I thought that this was one of the best things that Cava ever did, was to put signature bowls on the menu. I'm not opposed to customization, but when it comes to certain types of food or certain levels of quality on the menu, customers don't always know what's best. They need a chef to curate, to tailor the ingredients for them. And that's, again, at the real heart of what Roots is doing, is it has a chef curating these bowls, putting these natural ingredients together into a recipe that chef knows a consumer will like, and the consumer can just point at it. Last thing I'll say on this point is, when it comes to natural foods or any other type of sort of food label, as Henry said, it can get confusing. People don't always know the definitions of these things. And again, that's why it's so important to keep it simple, because you don't want it to seem exclusive. You don't want it to seem like something that's too fancy and put off anybody. You want it to seem like something that's relatable and accessible. And simplicity is often the key to doing that. My second takeaway is that you should treat your customers like you've invited them to your party. That was what Henry said the philosophy is at Roots Natural Kitchen, that they want to treat customers like they're coming to their party. And, he says, the point he made here is that if you invite somebody to your party, you're not going to have them come to your party and then proceed to, confuse them with highfalutin menu items, or, give them a bad experience or treat them poorly. You're going to treat them like they're very special, because then they're in your home. They're there at your invitation. He especially said that's true of the menu, and that's why Roots doesn't want to overcomplicate things. Because when you see things as, oh, I've invited this person to my party, you want to make it an enjoyable experience, and that enjoyable experience is usually going to happen through being laid back, chill, not overly complicated. But I just love that notion of thinking about your customer like you're throwing a party and you've invited them to the party, because it means you're going to pay a lot more attention to all of those details that you put into that restaurant experience. And so I think you should think about what kind of party you're throwing in your restaurant and figure out how to invite the customers in and treat them like they're at your party. My third takeaway is that younger consumers are natural growth catalysts. This has, been really sort of kids meal 101 over the years. Fast food brands especially understand that, if you can excite that child customer through a toy or whatever it is, you often get brand loyalty at an early age. That remains true today too. And, especially this Kids Eat Free program that Roots has. I mean, that really is kind of a game changer for families like mine. It takes a huge load off from the check perspective. But as Henry said too, he's creating little evangelists in these kid consumers and in their parents who want to come in for that free food, but then discover this great natural food. Again, it's true today as it ever has been that if you connect with a kid, you often have a consumer for life. But I also want to drill in on the college students because Roots is opening in a lot of college towns, including here in Columbus, where I live. Obviously, it started in Charlottesville. It's opening through all these other college towns where Henry believes there's opportunity because a lot of businesses don't want to go in those college towns and have 3 or 4 months where there's no business happening. Roots sees opportunity in that because, again, if you can connect with that college student, you're going to probably grow alongside them. And as Henry and I talked about, if you think about a college student, right now they might be moving in with their parents and their parents might live in the suburbs. And so if Roots has a location on campus and then one in the suburbs, they're reaching them in both of those places. Some college students might move to the inner city and eventually maybe they'll end up in the suburbs on their own. But Roots can follow along on that journey because it gets their loyalty at an early age and then grows alongside them. So that could be the same thing that you could do with your own brand. My fourth takeaway is that digital ordering and customization may have given us so-called slopples. Now, if you've listened to my podcast recently, either this podcast or Extra Serving, you know that I hate this term. I will not be caught using this term in my copy, and I even hate saying it on this podcast and giving it any kind of validation because it is offensive and stupid. And if you're using it, you should stop. Now, what I think people are trying to accomplish with this term slop bowl is they're trying to get to this notion of bowls having really taken over the fast casual industry. And the other term you'll hear a lot these days is the sea of sameness. It's the same concept here. We're all trying to get to the same thing, which is that lots of fast casual restaurants especially have very similar menus, which is a bowl that has a bunch of ingredients in it. Now, slop, again, offensive because that would suggest that food is not delicious. And in a lot of cases, most of these cases, that food's still pretty good. But I think it's trying to get around to this idea of sort of that least common denominator, which is the fast casual experience has become less differentiated as people go in that direction. But the 2 points I'm making here that Henry really helped to clarify for me and I thought was really interesting is the first is the point of accuracy. And the second is the point of, again, sort of the customization an idea that customers can build their own bowls. That first point on accuracy, Henry said that during COVID, especially as more and more fast casuals embrace digital tools, digital ordering, those brands that were focused on customization, that was a little bit of a harder translation, a harder jump to make into digital channels. Because when you're customizing a bowl, when the employee is scooping the ingredients right in front of the customer, you're guaranteeing essentially accuracy. But when you move that customization to the digital channels, you lose a lot of that accuracy. So Henry was suggesting that this could have been one of the reasons why, it led to maybe a little bit more of the slop bowl mentality where bowls might have gotten more inaccurate. They also probably you probably lost a little bit of the trust because the customer can't engage with an employee and ask, does this ingredient work? What do you like? Instead, they're just kind of picking things online. But the second thing that may have led to this idea of slop bowls is just the power of the customer to make these things themselves and not understanding what ingredients work together. And so all of this, again, comes around to, you should probably curate your bowls or at least have that on your menu. Have some signature bowls if you're a bowl concept. And you should probably make sure on your digital channels there's some kind of assistance or some kind of way that you're guiding the customer through the process so that they can trust that what they're building is going to work. And I think if you do that, you're going to have that differentiating factor on your menu again, and you're going to avoid this kind of slop bowl mentality. This is what Roots is doing. They've put a lot of effort into making sure that their curated bowls are high quality and are effortlessly served both via digital ordering and in person, as Henry talked about in our conversation. My fifth and final takeaway is that better for you food is possible if the volume capacity is high. This, to me, was sort of the $1 million question I wanted to ask Henry, which is, why are they going to succeed where so many others have failed? I've seen this in my 17 years covering this industry. So many examples of restaurants coming in saying, we're going to be different. We're going to be the ones who finally crack the code on unhealthy fast food. We're going to do it at an affordable price point, but it's going to be better for you, et cetera, et cetera. It does not work. There have been a lot of failures, high profile ones too, where they said they're going to change things and they just couldn't do it. There's a lot of reasons for that. And this is not going to be, some silver bullet, but it is important to remember that you have to have that sort of high volume capacity. And Henry talked about how that works for Roots, which is Roots has two make lines. They have the digital make line and the regular make line. They have a robust catering program. They have drive-throughs in a lot of their location. And what this does is that even though margins are a little bit more pressured because of the high cost of goods, they're able to make up for it really through volume. And so those numbers have to work in order for you to have this mission-oriented brand around natural foods. But if you can make it work, especially with high volumes, it can be done. And I think Roots is really one of the most exciting brands to come up that I've seen that is proving that you can do a better for you natural food model at volume, at scale, and start to change the way that Americans are eating. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.